Greetings. We are going to be reading pages, Roll of Thunder, Hear My Cry, starting in chapter 9, page 200 to 210. When supper was ready, I eagerly grabbed the iron bell before Christopher John, or little man, could claim it, and ran to the back porch to summon Papa and Mr. Morrison and Stacy from the fields. As the three of them washed up on the back porch, Mama went to the end of the porch where Papa stood alone. "What did Mr. Jameson want?" she asked, her voice barely audible. Papa took the towel Mama handed him, but did not reply immediately. I was just inside the kitchen dipping out the butter beans. I moved closer to the window so I could hear her answer. "Don't keep anything from me, David. If there's trouble, I want to know." Papa looked down at her. "Nothing to worry about, honey. Just seems that Thurston Wallace been in town talking about how he's gonna let a few smart colored folks ruin his business. So he's gonna put a stop to this shopping in Vicksburg, that's all." Mama sighed and stared out across the plow field to the sloping pasture land. "I'm feeling scared, David," she said. Papa put down the towel. "Not yet, Mary. It's not time to be scared yet. They just talk." Mama turned and faced him. "And when they stop talking, then maybe it'll be time. But right now, pretty lady," he said, leading her by the hand toward the kitchen door. "Right now, I've got better things to think about." Quickly, I poured the rest of the butter beans into the bowl and hurried across the kitchen to the table. As Mom and Papa entered, I slid onto the bench beside little man and Christopher John. Papa beamed down at the table. "Well, look at here," he exclaimed. "Good old bun of beans and cornbread. You better come on, Mr. Morrison. You too, son," he called. "These women folks done gone and fixed us a feast." After school was out, spring dropped quickly towards summer. Yet Papa had not yet left for the railroad. He seemed to be waiting for something, and I secretly hoped that whatever something was, it would never come, so that he would not leave. But one evening, as he, Mama, Big Mom, Mr. Morrison, and Stacy sat on the front porch while Christopher John, little man, and I dashed around the yard chasing fireflies, I overheard him say, "Sunday, I'm going to have to go. Don't want to, though. I got this gut feeling it ain't over yet. It's too easy." I released the firefly and prisoned my hand and sat beside Papa and Stacy on the steps. "Papa, please," I said, leaning against his leg. "Don't go this year." Stacy looked out into the falling night. His face resigned and said nothing. Papa put on his large hand and caressed my face. "Huh, got to, Cassie girl," he said softly. There's bills to pay and no money coming in. Mama's got no job come fall, and there's the mortgage and next year's taxes to think of." "But, Papa, we're planting more cotton this year. Well, won't that pay the taxes?" Papa shook his head. "With Mr. Morrison here, we was able to plant more, but the cotton is for living on. The railroad money is for the taxes and the mortgage." I looked back at Mama, wanting her to speak, to persuade him to stay. But when I saw her face, I knew that she would not. She had known he would leave, just as we all had known. "Papa, just another week or two, couldn't we?" "I can't, baby. I may have lost my job already." "But, Papa—" "Cassie, that's enough now," Mama said from the deepening shadows. I grew quiet, and Papa put his arms around Stacy and me, his hands falling casually over our shoulders. From the edge of the lawn where little man and Christopher John had ventured after lightning bugs, little man called, "Somebody's coming!" A few minutes later, Mr. Avery and Mr. Lanier emerged from the dusk and walked up the sloping lawn. Mama sent Stacy and me to get some chairs from the porch. Then we settled back beside Papa, still sitting on the steps, his back propped against the pillar facing the visitors. "You going up to the store now, David?" Mr. Avery asked after all the amenities had been said. Since the first trip in January, Mr. Morrison had made one other trip to Vicksburg, but Papa had not gone with him. Papa motioned to Mr. Morrison. "Mr. Morrison, me going the day after tomorrow. Your wife brought down the list of things you need yesterday." Mr. Avery cleared his throat nervously. It's the list I come about, David. I don't want them things no more." The porch grew silent. When no one said anything, Mr. Avery glanced at Mr. Lanier, and Mr. Lanier shook his head and continued. Mr. Granger making it hard on us, David. Said we're going to have to give him 60% of the cotton instead of 50. Now, that cotton's planted, and it's too late to plant more. Don't supposing, though, it makes much of a difference. The way cotton sells these days, seems the more we plant, the less money we gets anyways. Mr. Avery's coughing interrupted him, and he waited patiently until the coughing had stopped before he went on. I'm gonna be hard. I'm gonna be hard put to pay that debt in Vicksburg, David, but I'm gonna. I want you to know that. Papa nodded, looking toward the road. I suppose Montier and Harrison raised their percentages too, he said. Montier did, replied Mr. Avery. But as far as I know, Mr. Harrison ain't. He's a decent man. That does it, Mama sighed wearily. Papa kept looking out into the darkness. 40%. I ain't expect a man to be living off 50 could live on 40 if he wanted to hard enough. Mr. Avery shook his head. Time's too hard. Time's hard for everybody, Papa said. Mr. Avery cleared his throat. I know. I feel real bad about what TJ done. I wasn't talking about that, said Papa flatly. Mr. Avery nodded self-consciously, then leaned forward in his chair and looked out into the forest. But that ain't all, Mr. Granger said. Said, too, we don't give up this shopping in Vicksburg. We can just get off his land. Said he's tired of us stirring up trouble against good, decent white folks. Then them Wallaces, they come by my place, Brother Lanier's, and everybody's on this thing that owes them money. Said we can't pay our debts. They're going to have the sheriff's out to get us. Put us in a chain gang and work all... Oh, good Lord, exclaimed Big Mom. Mr. Lanier nodded and added, got to go up to that store by tomorrow and show good faith. Mr. Avery's coughing started again. And for a while, there was only the coughing and the silence. But when the coughing ceased, Mr. Lanier said, I pray to God there was a way we could stay in this thing, but we can't go on no chain gang, David. Papa nodded. Don't expect you to, Silas. Mr. Avery laughed. We sure had him going for a while, though. You know, didn't we? Yes, we sure did, agreed Papa quietly. When the men had left, Stacy snapped. They got no right pulling out. Just because them Wallaces threatening them one time, they go jumping all over themselves to get out like a bunch of scared jackrabbits. Papa stood suddenly and grabbed Stacy upward. You boy, don't you get so grown you go on talk about more than you know. Them men, they doing what they gotta do. You got no idea what risk they took just going shopping in Vicksburg in the first place. They go on the chain gang and their families got nothing. They'll get kicked off that plot of land they tend to. There'll be no place for them to go. You understand that? Yes, sir, said Papa. Papa released him and stared moodily into the night. You were born blessed, boy. A land of your own. If you hadn't been, you'd cry out for a while to try to survive. Like Mr. Lanier and Mr. Avery. Maybe even do what they doing now. It's hard on a man to give up. Sometimes, seems there just ain't nothing else to do. I'm sorry, Papa, Stacy muttered. After a moment, Papa reached out and draped his arm around Stacy's shoulder. Papa, I said, standing to join them, we giving up too? Papa looked down at me and brought me closer, then waved his hand toward the drive. You see that fig tree over yonder, Cassie? Them other trees all around? That oak and that walnut? They're a lot bigger. They take up more room and give so much shade, they almost overshadow that little old fig.